The first time I saw her, she was crying in the parking lot of a Walmart at 2 in the morning, her breath visible in the freezing December air, her hands clutching a receipt like it was the only solid thing left in her world. I should have kept walking. I had my own problems, a dying mother, mounting hospital bills, and a night shift that was slowly eating away at whatever was left of my soul. But something about the way she stood there, so utterly alone beneath those harsh fluorescent lights, made me stop. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change everything. Not just for her, not just for me, but for everyone whose life she would touch in the months to come. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, though I wouldn't learn that until later. That night she was just a stranger in a worn winter coat, mascara streaking down her cheeks, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I approached carefully, the way you might approach a wounded animal, and asked if she needed help. She looked up at me with eyes so full of despair that I actually took a step back. "They fired me," she whispered. I was 3 minutes late. 3 minutes. And they fired me. She laughed then, a broken sound that had no joy in it. "I have 2 kids at home. I don't know how I'm going to feed them tomorrow." I stood there in that parking lot, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like snow. I had $43 in my wallet, money I'd been saving for my mother's medication. I looked at Sarah, at this woman I'd never met before, and I made a choice that defied all logic. I handed her $20. It wasn't much. It wasn't nearly enough, but it was something. She stared at the bill like I'd handed her a winning lottery ticket. And then she did something unexpected. She didn't thank me. She didn't cry. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm going to pay this forward. I swear to God, I'm going to make this matter." I thought about that encounter for weeks afterward. I thought about it when I worked my shifts at the hospital, emptying bedpans and checking vitals, watching people come and go, live and die. I thought about it when my mother passed away 3 weeks later, when I stood at her grave and wondered what the point of anything was. I thought about Sarah Mitchell and her 2 kids and that $20 bill, and I wondered if she'd kept her promise or if it had been just another desperate thing said by someone in crisis. 4 months later, I found out. I was shopping at a thrift store, looking for a cheap interview suit because I'd finally decided to go back to school, when I heard someone call my name. I turned around and there she was, Sarah Mitchell, but she looked different. Her eyes were clear. She was smiling, and she was wearing a name tag that said manager. "You," she said, walking toward me with purpose. "You're the woman from the parking lot." I nodded, suddenly embarrassed. "I am. I'm glad you're doing better." "Better?" She laughed, and this time the sound was genuine. "I'm doing more than better. Come here. I need to show you something." She led me to the back office where the walls were covered with photographs. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. Pictures of people, all kinds of people, holding signs with numbers on them. $20, $45, $100, $500. I didn't understand at first. And then Sarah began to explain. After that night in the parking lot, she'd taken my $20 and bought groceries for her kids. She'd also started a journal, writing down exactly how that small act of kindness had made her feel. The next day, she'd walked into 7 different businesses until one finally gave her a chance. She'd worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. And when she got her first paycheck, she'd given $20 to someone else who needed it, a homeless veteran standing outside the grocery store. She'd asked him to take a picture with a sign showing the amount. She'd asked him to promise that when he was able, he'd help someone else and document it too. And she'd created a social media page called Title Her, a movement dedicated to giving women, particularly mothers in crisis, the title they deserved: survivors, fighters, heroes. "That veteran," Sarah said, pointing to the first photograph on her wall. "He got into a shelter that night with the money I gave him. 2 months later, he had a job. Last week, he donated $200 to a women's shelter. And look, here's the woman who received help from that donation." She pointed to another photo. "She started a small business. Now she employs 3 other single mothers." I stared at the wall, my throat tight. Each photograph represented a person whose life had been touched by that initial $20. It had multiplied. It had grown. It had become something far bigger than either of us could have imagined. "There's over 300 people on this wall now," Sarah said softly. 300 lives changed because you stopped that night. Because you saw me. Because you cared. I felt tears streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. I didn't do anything special. I just gave you some money. No, Sarah said firmly. You gave me hope. You gave me the belief that humanity still exists, that people still care about each other. And that's what I've been trying to pass on. Not just money, hope. She told me more. About the single mother in Texas who'd received help and started a community garden that now fed 50 families. About the college student in Ohio who'd been about to drop out until someone bought her textbooks. She was now graduating with honors in social work. About the elderly man in Florida who'd been choosing between medication and food until Title Her helped him. He now volunteered at a food bank every weekend. Every person on this wall has been titled, Sarah explained. Not by society's standards, not by their bank accounts or their job titles, but by their humanity, by their strength, by their ability to survive and then help others survive. I thought about my mother then, about how she'd always told me that the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest ripples. I'd never truly understood what she meant until that moment. Standing in that thrift store office, looking at a wall covered in proof that goodness multiplies. I want you to have something, Sarah said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $2,000. This is from the Title Her Fund. We've been raising money. I know you're going back to school. I know you struggled after your mom passed. Let us help you. I tried to refuse. I tried to say it was too much. But Sarah wouldn't hear it. You started this, she said. The least we can do is make sure you can finish what you started in your own life. That was 2 years ago. I graduated last spring with a degree in social work. I work now with Title Her full-time, helping coordinate resources for women in crisis. We've expanded to 17 states. We've helped over 5,000 people, and every single one of them has paid it forward in some way. But here's what I've learned that matters more than the numbers. Every person has a story. Every person standing in that parking lot at 2 in the morning, crying over a lost job or an empty bank account or a life that feels like it's falling apart. Every single one of them has the capacity to change the world if someone just stops long enough to see them. Sarah often says that I saved her that night. But the truth is, she saved me. She saved me from becoming so wrapped up in my own pain that I forgot what my mother had always known, that we're all connected, that our actions ripple outward in ways we can't always see, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply care about another human being. Last week, we titled our 10,000th person. Her name was Maria, a recent immigrant who was working 3 jobs to support her family. Someone from our network bought her a plane ticket so she could visit her sick father in Colombia. She took a photograph holding a sign that said 800 and wrote beneath it, "You titled me daughter again." I think about that photograph a lot. I think about what it means to title someone, not with words on a business card or a degree on a wall, but with recognition of their inherent worth, with acknowledgement of their struggle, with the simple message, I see you. You matter. Your life has value. That's what Sarah Mitchell understood that night in the parking lot. That's what she's been teaching ever since. We don't need grand gestures to change the world. We don't need unlimited resources or perfect circumstances. We just need to be willing to stop, to see, to care, and to believe that our small acts of kindness can become someone else's lifeline. The wall in our office is much bigger now. We had to move to a larger space, but we kept every photograph, every story, every reminder that humanity, real, messy, beautiful humanity still exists, that people still care for each other, that a single act of compassion can multiply into thousands of acts of hope. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret giving away that $20 when I needed it so badly myself. I tell them the truth. It was the best investment I ever made. Because it didn't just help Sarah Mitchell. It helped me remember what my mother knew all along, that we're not meant to walk through this world alone, carrying our burdens in silence. We're meant to stop for each other, to help each other, to title each other with the only name that truly matters, human. And that, more than anything else, is worth far more than $20. It's worth everything.